Good evening. I'll address that in a second, Sam. I'm Know Nothing Attorney. I know nothing so you can too, because it's only in embracing that we know nothing that we can actually learn anything. And as I was challenged tonight, I was asked, can you learn stuff? And I was like, yeah, you can learn stuff, but you can learn all you want and never actually know. You can only gain confidence by learning. Learning is what I aim to do with you guys. Every time I'm here live, I hope to learn from you, and I hope you can learn along with me. And with that being said, we're in the shit, y'all. The new Jim Crow is on. So we'll just go ahead and address that up right up at the front, Sam. How do I want to describe that? Delineations of different groups of people are helpful as long as they're helpful. They should exist as identifiable characteristics as long as they are helpful. Race is not, from ground zero, a helpful distinction, but it is helpful so long as legally identifiable groups of people separated into groups called race experience disparate outcomes along identifiable lines that coincide with race. Race doesn't fucking mean anything. It's a bullshit concept. But if results continue to display themselves along racial lines, then you better believe we should continue to identify race. The state should continue to identify race so long as different races experience disparate outcomes. Because the question becomes, why? Why are those races experiencing disparate outcomes? We need to look into behaviors, into systems, to determine why that exists. The state should only stop identifying race when it is no longer helpful to identify race. Because if you cease to identify race, but people still experience disparate impact along racial divides, then you're not helping anything by dismissing it, you're just ignoring the problem. Which is exactly what the Supreme Court wants us to do today. Let's not pretend they're colorblind. They call it colorblindness. It's not colorblindness. They are aware. They are aware of disparate outcomes. They just welcome it. They invite it to stay. That's not colorblind. That's why I say colorblindness is a lie. And I'm probably going to say this multiple times tonight. Oh, I should @ everyone. There's the @. Okay. I would agree that they aren't colorblind, but if the government is identifying color, then that prevents citizens from having the option of ignoring it themselves. Citizens and the state are completely different things with completely different responsibilities. Citizens don't have a responsibility, unless you're talking a moral responsibility, to identify race. Citizens can ignore race. I regularly do. I mean, I guess not if I'm like on my channel talking about racial disparities. But citizens can. The state cannot, and we cannot afford the state to ignore it. What the state has a responsibility to do doesn't have a bearing on the people. I mean, okay, I guess I see where you're coming from. Like, they have to experience the outcomes of what the state does. I see what you mean. Employers can't ignore the fact that if they hire a white guy and he doesn't work out, it's easier to fire him than if they hire a black woman who doesn't work out and needs to be fired. In either case, you have to document the basis for which you are firing them. As long as you're documenting them the same way, then there is no issue. You may have a person who raises an issue, but you can't prevent that. People will find all sorts of excuses to call themselves a victim based on a certain special circumstance. That won't be prevented by, like, the race problem going away. You'll just have several different other problems, like people complaining about being fired for having conservative political opinions. Quote unquote conservative. But once again, there's a difference between the employer not being able to ignore it and the employer having to be forced to act in a certain way. And I guess, in some cases they are forced to act in a certain way. We have non-discrimination laws. But I would say that non-discrimination laws are a net good. I would hope most people would. But what we have here is one man shooting another and then complaining that the nurse isn't paying equal attention to him. That's what's happening here. And then the Supreme Court tells them they're right. I mean, literally, we're just doing Jim Crow. That is what we're doing, and we're just saying it's fine. Like, we dug ourselves out of that hole, and now we're just walking right back into it. It means that if I have two candidates that are completely equal, except one is a white man and one is a black woman, the employer has a motivation to hire the white man because the risk of firing them is less. Why is the risk of firing them less? Is that not counterbalanced by the risk of not hiring the black woman more? And oh no, boo-hoo, employers have to deal with certain shit. Uh-huh. But then you can still be sued for discrimination based on your hiring. Okay. I'm a little confused what you're saying is the solution to this problem, Sam. You're saying that the state should get rid of anti-discrimination laws? Because I think that would be the only thing that would get rid of that problem. And I think the anti-discrimination laws do a lot more good than they do prevent people with equal eligibility for a job from getting their job. I'm willing to bet the that is outweighed. Just think that the state recognizing race as a legal category also creates some of the racism that people are using illegal recognition of race to prevent racism. Creates some of the racism that people are using a legal recognition of race to prevent racism. Sam, the alternative is that you don't address racism. That's it. Racism will still exist whether the government addresses it or not. But by the government addressing it, then the government has the power to take corrective action. Sam isn't a troll. Man, I got all excited to start streaming at like 10:20, and then I like sat here like making sure I was ready to talk about this shit. Whoops, that's not the right one. Okay, I guess we have no choice. I mean, I guess before we pull up the opinion, we can check the news and see if there's anything further about it. I just honestly think that at some point the government needs to move past identifying race if we as a society ever want race to stop being such a major factor. I mean, like I started off with, it only makes sense for the state to stop identifying race when race stops being a helpful category to like measure people by. And that will only happen when there stops being all this disparate impact along racial lines. We definitely need education. And the same states that want this, these racist, gerrymandered maps are the same ones that don't want education in their states. I mean, there was language. There was language in the Civil Rights Act and in the Reconstruction Project about like all citizens being I don't know if it has to be citizens, but all people being afforded the equal benefits of the law. And that probably would have gone a long way. Yes, this topic is because of the latest SCOTUS ruling. Callais. So I think a better solution to the racist gerrymandered maps is to make districts based on normal shapes. Yeah, no shit. That would be great. Or to choose some kind of statistic-based methodology of generating these maps. I am sure somebody has built systems to calculate what are reasonable districts. Okay, we're gonna check out some news before we read the Callais opinion. I also think that House districts should only have like 20,000 people max. Yeah, that one's a hard one to deal with because then you just start to get like an unwieldy number of representatives. Man, are they pulling out all the stops to try and steal the midterms, but they're still gonna fail is the hilarious part. I mean, I'm not being optimistic about that. Got an alarm going off. Totally forgot I said that. Then we need another layer of representation. I mean, yeah, that's possible. I got 5 on it. I mean, what's gonna happen is they're gonna keep edging, like, edging things forward to see what the impact is. We're going to do things like restoring the Louisiana gerrymandered map. We're going to get like all 12 of these Republican seats in the South. They're going to redraw those lines, and they're going to see how the public responds. And if the public doesn't respond enough in their favor, they're going to try one more thing that is a little more crazy. And they're going to keep doing that. And they're going to keep doing that until November. I mean, on top of all that, we had fucking James Comey got arrested again. Indicted again for 8647, just the most nonsense thing ever. I would love to dig into what happened with that grand jury. Like, what the fuck is that? Maddie, fuck! Yeah, that's where I'm at. All this admin has been doing is pushing the line to see how far they can go, and they're going to keep doing it. Hey, those seashells were very aggressive. That shit is dead on arrival just like last time. I mean, yeah. I'm actually surprised that they did it again. Maddie's on a 30 stream streak, screaming fuck. Yeah. We're going through the news real quick. We did like an opening discussion on fucking getting rid of the concept of race at the national level, at the governmental level, and how I don't think that is a good idea to happen anytime soon. But we're going to cover news a little bit, and then we're going to get into the Callais opinion. Did you see Louisiana? And I wasn't expecting this early. Also, I wasn't expecting this early. Yeah, I felt a little motivated to talk, and I was also expecting earlier, but I took too long, like, getting prepped for this. No, I have not checked out the book you mentioned. They need distractions from the Epstein files for as long as possible. Yeah, I mean, I honestly think these are two equivalent fronts that the administration is fighting on. I don't think this is a distraction. This has been a long-term goal from the beginning, even without the Epstein files. They are going to find ways to dismantle the election before it happens. He hasn't even seen the Timothy Snyder stuff yet. No, this is pre-Trump. What's pre-Trump? Oh, the dismantling the Voting Rights Act? Oh, yeah, for sure.
Other words, the defendant, as in Todd Blanche at the Department of Justice production of materials, is a final agency action. Remember, he said, I'm done. I'm not doing it anymore. And the production is not in accordance with the law. Count 2 is a violation of that administrative procedure.
You should give it a look. I honestly think it's a legitimate challenge to how racism is currently being addressed. I mean, it was written before the Callais opinion. So I'll put that as 1 point against it. I'm also, 1 second here. What was it? Shoot, I had some notes. Oh, where did my freaking notes go? Yeah, there we go. There's my notes. Yeah, doing my research today, I found out that Texas was added to the Voting Rights Act pre-clearance list in 1975, which would be immediately after my dad helped draw the Texas redistricting maps after the Civil Rights Act that was found to be unconstitutionally racially discriminatory, and then helped redraw the maps afterwards. Then Texas was added to the pre-clearance list. Like, I can draw a direct line from my dad to Texas being listed in the Voting Rights Act. Yay! Yay! Try and stay optimistic. I know it's hard, but this admin is incompetent as fuck. No, I know they are. I know they are. I am grateful every day that we don't have somebody.
There's a few other.
More. Stop it! I didn't do that.
The things
I'm grateful every day that we don't have someone more competent doing all this shit. We would be really in for it if someone were competent. ChatGPT? What's ChatGPT? Huh? Oh. Louisiana governor prepares to suspend House primaries after court ruling. Oh, good. Governor Jeff Landry told Republican House candidates he plans to suspend the May 16th primary election so lawmakers can redraw the congressional map. Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry told Republican House candidates, oh, hey, Evelyn, Wednesday that he plans to suspend next month's primary election so state lawmakers can pass a new congressional map first, according to two people with knowledge of the calls. The move follows a Supreme Court decision, Callais, earlier in the day that found Louisiana had unlawfully discriminated by race when it created a second majority black congressional district under legal pressure to conform with the Voting Rights Act by responding to racism. You can't fix racism today by focusing on race. It is unconstitutional to fix racism with race. The 6-3 decision limited a key provision of the landmark Voting Rights Act and could lead to other black Democrats across the South losing their House seats. Most states are unlikely to be able to redraw districts in time for the November midterm elections, but Louisiana could be one of the exceptions. Landry's announcement to suspend the May 16th primary could come as early as Friday. Good God. Imagine if this was a Roy Cohn type. Yeah. Suspending primary election feels like a big red line. Yeah, we're in it. We're in it. Like, it's no surprise that these states are the Jim Crow states. It's just still alive. We are just doing blatant racism. That pesky Constitution keeps getting in the way of everything for them. Yeah, they fucking hate the Constitution. Stupid Constitution.
Act, because right now the department.
Oh, nope, same link. I see what happened.
Department of Justice is producing materials in an arbitrary and capricious way because
the Sons of Confederacy is about to step back out of the shadows.
Adequate, reasoned, or lawful for redacting documents in whole or in part, retracting documents, or failing to produce others. Thank you, Brendan, for reminding me here. Another part of this lawsuit is the fact that documents have been provided and then...
Okay. Yeah, well, we all know what's going on with the Epstein files. Powell says legal attacks on Federal Reserve are battering the institution. Yeah, James Comey surrenders to police. Yep. 86-47. Woo! Careful, Austin. You're going to get in trouble because it's not like 86 just means to remove someone or something. I just pictured selling toilet paper with a Constitution on it to them because that's what they're doing with it. Man, now that feels like something that you need to go to a CPAC and just start handing out rolls of toilet paper for people. Don't even sell it to them, just pass it around. It'll just be a thing that gets on the news. Weren't the Daughters of the Confederacy forced to start paying tax? Does this have the freaking map? I want to see the map. No. The map that shows the 12 House seats. Voters can be disenfranchised now. Just say it's because they're Democrats? I don't know about that. Yeah, Athena, dead on the nose. Well, this was the other fun piece of news today. Whoop. There we go. The ICE agent who shot and killed Renee Good in Minneapolis and then called her a fucking bitch moments before she died in her car has been transferred to a different state to continue his work with the agency as the FBI continues to suppress an investigation into him. Punch Up, the Daily Beast news Substack, reported that Jonathan Ross, who was only placed on 3 days of administrative leave, Jesus fucking Christ, for shooting Good in the arm, head, and chest, is back in both an administrative and investigative capacity, facing virtually no consequences for killing an innocent woman in broad daylight. This is the kind of reporting I appreciate. Call balls and strikes. You don't just have to list facts. I mean, I would say that's a fact also, but mainstream reporting is so afraid to, like, have statements that could be considered opinions. I'll tell you, conservative media doesn't do that. You know what the cure might be? The "it's so crazy it could work" maneuver? Ooh. A constitutional convention? That's the only way we fix the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is fucked. So in the Jim Crow states, you get black people and minorities to register as Republicans en masse. Oh, yeah. Drive all the white people to the Democrat Party. Department of Homeland Security officials told the outlet that ICE's internal affairs can't conduct its own investigation until the FBI probe ends, meaning Ross could avoid accountability for a long time to come. The FBI's investigation into Ross has been delayed and marked by a series of controversial moves. 6 senior Justice Department officials quit in January over the department's handling of the case, as did an FBI supervisor in the Minneapolis field office who was pushed to discontinue her civil rights probe into Ross. And while the DOJ claims that the investigation is ongoing, the only thing that's come out of it is Ross returning to work. Woo! Didn't really explain the cushy job, but okay. Just take over their party. I mean, conservative media just lies their ass off since there are no consequences, right? I mean, Alex Jones did get consequences? Question mark. Oh, wow, so it's a switchback? Let's do a party switch.
Hey, everybody. The indictment of James Comey.
Seashell's indictment of James Comey has been called the dumbest case in the history of the Justice Department. Yeah. Ted Cruz actually has a good opinion. Vote for primaries. It'd easily swamp out the local elections. All 6 GOP appointed justices on the guest list for Trump's King Charles dinner. No Dem appointed justices invited. Everything's insane. Everything's insane. After Callais, calls to reform Supreme Court grow deafening. I don't know how you're going to do that. Gotta have a constitutional convention, and if I get to have that debate this weekend, then that will be one of my points. Okay, I guess I should say very rarely held accountable. I can't forget the Dominion suit. Yeah. Oh boy. I always get reminded of this when I hear Seashell's case.
Here you go.
Okay.
Any new info, Rama, on Simon Phoenix?
There is nothing, Lenina Huxley. Where's your John Spartan?
Oh, he went to the bathroom. I guess he got all thought out.
Oh. Sir, I formally convey my presence.
We are not used to physical contact greetings.
That is way longer of a clip than I thought it would be.
He doesn't know how to use the 3 seashells. I can see how that could be confusing.
I don't believe it. Is that you, Spartan?
I've never actually watched this movie. Does this bit keep going? Yeah, Schneider. Born Yesterday trope. What, Born Sexy Yesterday? Yes, yes. I actually think that she was her character was included in that video, I believe. All right, Callais. Who's ready for an exciting, enthralling reading of a Supreme Court opinion? I mean, I guess we can just overview it real quick. Basically, the finding of Callais, in the shortest of terms, is that addressing racially discriminatory outcomes by means that address race is racially discriminatory unconstitutionally. Where's the freaking quote? I've got the quote here. Come on. Chief Justice Roberts famously wrote that the way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. And by that, he means if you have a fire department, you better be spraying water on all houses equally. If there's one house on fire, you cannot spend extra time on that house. That would be discriminatory toward the other houses that need more, that should also have more water. I've been searching for years now. Searching for what? Wait, does that mean it was argued from October of last year till today? Oh yeah, this has been going for a while. We've been waiting for this opinion to come out. We have been waiting to hear that racially addressing racism is racist. The real racism that white people can't say the N-word. There's this super random quote by Roberts during his confirmation hearings where someone asked him about how he'd be viewed in history, and it kills me that I can't find it. They've been shadow docketing things for years now. They were gearing up this and salivating over it. Yeah. I actually prefer, I mentioned this earlier, I prefer to the firefighter one. I also think there's another good one. It's imagine an emergency room where people had to be treated in the order they arrived. That wouldn't make any fucking sense. But the one I prefer is one man shooting another and then calling it discriminatory when the doctor doesn't treat him as much as they treat the other one. That's what's happening here. Next up. Well, wait, is there a way to keep track of the cases they are arguing? I'm sure you can find a website that keeps track of everything on the Supreme Court docket. I don't know it off the top of my head. But the actual holding here, not Loving, not Obergefell, not Brown. Nope, they're going to gut Marbury v. Madison. What? Wait, how are they going after Marbury v. Madison? Oh, are you saying that just expect that? I know of Newitt, but they mostly deal with the House. Okay. So the actual holding here was under the Voting Rights Act, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, a minority district was created in Louisiana to address the problem that Black Americans make up 1/3 of Louisiana's population and only got 1/6 of the representation. They found that the maps were intentionally drawn to disenfranchise black voters. So a new district was drawn to make sure that there was racially fair franchisement in the state of Louisiana. Why mess with those others when you can just behead SCOTUS all in one go? The only reason they haven't killed Title IX because it's politically useful for them. Yeah. So some voters sued under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act that requires an end to all racially discriminatory voting practices. And they won. And so that district was drawn as a result of that lawsuit. But then some non-African American voters in Louisiana sued about this new district, and the new district was found to be racially discriminatory. And so now there is a new test, thanks to Callais. The new test requires, hold on here. Syllabus. There we go. Per Justice Alito, is that a plaintiff bringing a voter dilution case about district maps, they have to prove two things. First, they have to prove that a new majority-minority district would satisfy all of the legislature's goals in drawing the map. All the district's other goals. So you have to say, hey, the Louisiana legislature wants to maximize Republican seats, and they're racist. So they drew these maps a certain way. So now the black voters that were disenfranchised, in arguing that they want a district that fairly represents them, have to argue on behalf of the legislature that the new district does everything that the legislature wants. You literally have to prove that you will do what your enemy wants. So, step one, insane. Where's my second half of the test here? There we go. Right. Second part of the test. The plaintiffs have to prove that there's a difference between the voting block, how the voting block would vote based on race versus partisan voting. So if your racial minority happens to all vote a specific way, you're fucked. Sorry. So if one party says, fuck black people, and you want your black majority-minority district, and you want to, everybody there is going to vote against the party of fuck black people, sorry, that's a partisan voting block. We've made that a political issue, I guess. Sure, Maddie. I think you can change it. But I'll do it. No, it's okay. updated. You can also update the tags. Calais. My own tag. SCOTUS. Put my music back on. So we're done looking at videos. Maddie, I just generally trust you. So it's bullshit. What? Huh? Where do I change? There we go. Okay. Also, has the justice done as much damage to this country as Thomas or maybe Roberts has? Well, I'm sure if you go back to the 19th century, there are some justices who did a lot of shit. I would just like to not roll back our progress by 150 years. Taney was considered the worst justice ever. Yeah. Okay, let's check it out. Justice Alito delivered the opinion of the court. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was designed to enforce the Constitution, not collide with it. Unfortunately, lower courts have sometimes applied this court's Section 2 precedents in a way that forces states to engage in the very race-based discrimination that the Constitution forbids. Jesus Christ, I cannot believe that that paragraph was written. That's so embarrassing. That's so embarrassing. Trying to fix racism is racism. You know they do the Joker grin when they write it. I can't. Just fucking Supreme Court justice. I can't take your opinion seriously. By the way, Maddie, this is how you can change the title. Oh yeah, okay. This tension between Section 2 and the Constitution came to a head when Louisiana redrew its congressional districts after the 2020 census. Came to a head. Feels like weird language for this. In 2022, a federal judge in the Middle District of Louisiana held that the map adopted by the state legislature likely violated Section 2 because it did not include an additional majority black district. But when the state drew a new map that contained such a district, its new map was challenged as a racial gerrymander. A three-judge court in the Western District of Louisiana held that the new map violated the Equal Protection Clause, and the state appealed to this court. The Equal Protection Clause is so frustratingly misinterpreted. Equal protection under the law is not the same thing as equal treatment under the law. If equal treatment would afford someone less protection than someone else, then you're failing. Oh, they misinterpreted on purpose. I know they do. Well, I think there's some poor suckers out there that think that's really how it's supposed to be interpreted. You know, and my opinion would be that there are plenty of suckers out there who don't intentionally misinterpret the Second Amendment. But what you gonna do? Yeah, it came to a head is very informal. It's very what's the word I'm looking for? Value judgment. They're the people who do this kind of gear pulling and riding. Oh, yeah. Same point, like Heller. You know Heller was based on some gun manufacturer money. Ooh. The parties originally briefed and argued this suit last term, and their arguments at that time highlighted problems in the existing body of Section 2 case law. One problem resulted from the rule that in racial gerrymandering cases, unlike other cases involving claims of racial discrimination, strict scrutiny is triggered only if race predominated in the state's decision-making process. The parties originally briefed and argued this suit last term, and their arguments at the time highlighted problems in the existing body of Section 2 case law. One problem resulted from the rule that in racial gerrymandering cases, unlike other cases involving claims of racial discrimination, strict scrutiny is triggered only if race predominated in the state's decision-making process. In this suit, Louisiana adopted the challenged map and created the second majority black district because it quite reasonably anticipated that, if it did not do so, the Middle District of Louisiana would order the use of a map with a differently configured second majority black district that would effectively oust an incumbent whom the legislature sought to protect. Under our existing case law, that situation posed the question whether race or politics was the state's predominant motivation. Another problem stemmed from the long unresolved question whether compliance with the Voting Rights Act provides a compelling reason that may justify the intentional use of race in drawing legislative districts. There we go. There it is. For over 30 years, we have assumed, for the sake of argument, that the answer is yes. Boy. And we have gone further and assumed that it is enough if a state has a strong basis in evidence for thinking that the Voting Rights Act requires race-based conduct. I'm sorry, what? The Voting Rights Act does not require race-based conduct? What happened 30 years ago? For over 30 years, see infra at 9/11. They must be talking about a specific case. Are they talking about Arlington Heights? Huh. Give me a minute here. For over 30 years, we have assumed for the sake of argument that the answer is yes. I'm not sure. Infra is referring back to the previous citation. But that's like... that's like 50 years. And we've gone further and assumed that it is enough if a state has a strong basis in evidence for thinking that the Voting Rights Act requires race-based conduct. I'm sorry, strong basis in evidence in the state's opinion that the law requires race-based conduct. What do you mean? How would it not require race-based conduct? Yeah. But allowing race to play any part in government decision-making represents a departure from the constitutional rule that applies in almost every other context. No? Maddie, do you have something in mind? What am I missing here? There was a case in 1993 where like majority minority districts could be challenged constitutionally. So 1993 is a little over 30 years. Well, part of the problem is that the Supreme Court is not based at all on democracy. Democracy! I'll have to see if I can find a video real quick. Man, I can't find the video. I've been able to find it before. I wonder if AI can find it. Give me a second. Let's see if AI can find me a video. Come on, can you get it? Can you get it? Can you get it? Come on. Hello there. Alito next turned to the legal standard known as the Gingles test based on the 1986 case of Thornburg v. Gingles. The courts used to determine whether a map violates Section 2 by diluting minority voting power. The majority's interpretation of Section 2, Alito said, does not require abandonment of that test. Instead, he stressed the court only needed to update the framework so it aligns with the statutory text and reflects important developments since we decided Gingles 40 years ago. Important developments. Like, who was it that said the South has changed? Roberts. Justice Roberts. Things have changed in the South in 2013. Shelby County. When they got rid of Section 5 that had a list of states. Well, Section 4B was the list, but or the formula that creates the list or whatever it was. Section 5 required pre-clearance of certain states with a history of racial discrimination of voters before they changed any voting laws. Texas was on that list. And when killing Section 5, Roberts said things have changed in the South. And that day, was it that day or the next day? Oh, maybe it was a little bit longer. I don't know, but almost immediately. Oh, no, yeah, it was that day. Yeah. Texas implemented a new voter ID law that it had been banned from passing because it required pre-clearance. Things have changed in the South. Well, apparently not. No. No. I really want to find the Star Wars video. I'm not a big Star Wars fan, but this video fucking kills me. Those voter ID laws and voter purges have been spreading across the US like an octopus. Yep. Okay, back to the opinion while AI is working on that. These and other problems convinced us that the time had come to resolve whether compliance with the Voting Rights Act can indeed provide a compelling reason for race-based districting. We now know that question. Compliance with Section 2, as properly construed, can provide such a reason. Correctly understood, Section 2 does not impose liability at odds with the Constitution, and it should not have imposed liability on Louisiana for its 2022 map. Compliance with Section 2 thus could not justify the state's use of race-based redistricting here. The state's attempt to satisfy the Middle District's ruling, although understandable, was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander, and we therefore affirm the decision below. Your district map was a racial gerrymander as a correction to a racial gerrymander, and thus must be returned to the state of the original racial gerrymander. God damn it. I guess I'm just gonna have to give up on finding this video. I'm heartbroken.
Side of the
Nope. Not it. So this has been fun. Well, damn. Heartbroken. Yep. ADHD brain. You're right. Sigh. My girlfriend says that I should talk about, like, complex PTSD and ADHD. Do some advocacy up here too. Ever since like learning that I'm ADHD, like I can see other people and just be like, oh my god, you're ADHD. Oh, I get it now. I suffer from CPTSD as well due to narcissists. Yeah, my ex may be a narcissist, but she's definitely got borderline personality disorder, and it really fucked me up. Really fucked with my head. Okay. The state's attempt to satisfy the Middle District's ruling, although understandable, was an unconstitutional racial gerrymander, and we therefore affirm the decision below. Ratified in 1870, the 15th Amendment provides that the rights of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or by any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. That sounds like it should do away with the original racial gerrymander to begin with. For many years afterward, however, states heavily suppressed the rights of black citizens to vote. Where is this going, Alito? States employed a variety of notorious methods, including poll taxes, literacy tests, property qualifications, white primaries, and grandfather clauses in a blatant effort to suppress black voting. Even as late as the mid-1960s, black registration and voting rates in some states were appallingly low. As high as, like, what, 3%? In the southern states, or as low as 1% of voting age black Americans in what, Mississippi? It's 1%. It's going to no. White people have been the real victims of racism this whole time. Equality is discrimination. That's not what the quote is. What's the quote? I don't remember. In addition, states employed legislative districting schemes to prevent the election of black candidates and candidates that black voters preferred. Section 2 of the 15th Amendment authorizes Congress to enact appropriate legislation to enforce the amendment's protections, and in 1965, Congress invoked that power to enact the Voting Rights Act. The act and its amendments in the 1970s specifically forbade some of the practices that had been used to suppress black voting, including literacy tests and poll taxes. We upheld many of these provisions in Katzenbach. Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act in its original form closely tracked the language of the amendment it was adopted to enforce. At that time, Section 2 stated simply that no voting qualification or prerequisite to voting or standard, practice, or procedure shall be imposed or applied by any state or political subdivision to deny or abridge the right of any citizen of the United States to vote on account of race or color. In Mobile v. Bolden, 1980, the court interpreted this language, and 4 justices concluded in a plurality opinion that facially neutral voting practices violate Section 2 only if motivated by a discriminatory purpose. Which was fucking wild. Wild to conclude. Justice Stevens, who concurred in the judgment, proposed a different but similarly demanding standard. Indeed, in his view, a districting practice, even if motivated in part by race, would not violate Section 2 so long as it was supported by valid and articulable justifications. Bolden roused an avalanche of criticism, both in the media and within the civil rights community. The 1982 amendments to the Voting Rights Act... Critics argued that a focus on discriminatory intent rather than discriminatory effects would defeat worthy claims because of the difficulty of proving intentional discrimination. What was the video you were wanting to find? There's a great video that, like, you know, the things that are like so quotable in your head that no one else has ever heard of, just because like it's an earworm. There's a video I found on Reddit years and years ago that this person's like, my drunk friend sent me a video of himself watching Star Wars Episode 3, and the video is the guy, his friend watching Episode 3, quoting all of the lines of the Anakin versus Obi-Wan fight, and he's just drunk off his ass while doing it. Specifically the Obi-Wan quote. I don't even know the quote, but he's like, what about something Anakin? What about democracy? I do not see the Sith as you do. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful and charming. You turned her against me. Members of Congress evidently shared these concerns. In 1982, shortly after Bolden, Congress sought to abrogate that decision by amending Section 2. A House bill was originally passed under a loose understanding that Section 2 would prohibit all discriminatory effects of voting practices, and that intent would be irrelevant, but this version met stiff resistance in the Senate. Critics worried that an effects test would lead to mandatory racial proportionality in elections, a scenario regarded by many as intolerable. The House and Senate eventually compromised, and the final product included both an effects test in Section 2A and a robust disclaimer against proportionality in Section 2B. Cool. This latter provision also specifies what a plaintiff must establish to prove a Section 2 violation. The provision requires consideration of the totality of circumstances in each case and demands proof that the political processes leading to nomination or election in the state or political subdivision are not equally open to participation by members of a protected class, and that its members have less opportunity than other members of the electorate to participate in the political process and to elect representatives of their choice. Congress took this language almost verbatim from Justice White's opinion for the court in White v. Register. The fucking case that found my dad's redistricting map to be racially discriminatory. I sat here and read those words out loud. I said, White v. Register, where do I know that name from? Oh my God. Yes. This is it. I don't know why I couldn't find it. Like, I searched all of the fucking, like, words in the title of this video. Are you the Luke Skywalker of the legal world? What would make me a Luke Skywalker of the legal world? Oh, my dad. My dad is Darth Vader. I had never considered it that way. Yeah. Oh boy. Oh boy. It's one of my favorite videos.
You with him? Wanting me to kill me? Let her go, Anakin. Let her go.
You right here to kill me? Like,
you
Maddie,
turned her against me. You have done that yourself. You'll not take it from me! Your anger and your lust for power have already done that.
I hate it how she just died. Like, oh, she's sad and now
dark
dead. Yep.
world to twist your mind until now. Until now, you've become the very thing you swore to destroy. Don't let me, Obi-Wan.
Evidently loves
through
this
the lies
movie.
of the Jedi. I do not see the dark side as you do.
You don't see the dark side.
I have brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire. Your new empire? Don't make me kill you. Anakin, my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. If you're not with me, then you're my enemy.
You're my enemy.
Only a Sith deals in absolutes.
It's so funny to me how obviously this guy just loves the shit out of this movie. He knows the lines beat by beat. I cannot imagine loving Star Wars, especially Star Wars Episode 3, that much. I don't get it. But okay. I don't like sci-fi because I feel like there are no rules. I feel like fantasy, to write good fantasy, you have to establish more rules than sci-fi has to establish. Only a Sith deals with absolutes. It's such shitty writing. She should have been force choked to death by Palpatine from like millions of miles away. Congress took this language almost verbatim from Justice White's opinion for the court in White v. Register, which involved a vote dilution claim that a districting scheme impermissibly lessens the weight of the votes of minority voters. In White, the court affirmed a judgment that Texas had used 2 multi-member electoral districts invidiously to cancel out or minimize the voting strength of racial groups, specifically black voters and Hispanic voters. According to White, a vote dilution plaintiff had to show that the political processes leading to nomination and election were not equally open to participation by the group in question, that its members had less opportunity than did other residents in the district to participate in the political processes and to elect legislators of their choice. The decision in White did not say anything one way or another about proof of discriminatory purpose or intent, but the court's rationale rested on evidence that gave rise to an obvious inference that the state had set out to prevent the election of candidates preferred by minority voters. The Texas districting scheme generally used single-member districts but employed multi-member districts in 2 parts of the state, where single-member districts might have resulted in the election of minority candidates. One of those districts, at least, the Bear District, which is the area of San Antonio, was larger than several states. Oh, I'm going to put that music back on. Why does the state thing matter? It's just, it's a single voting district that got like multiple congressional representatives. So they specifically drew it to like minimize as many Hispanic and Black votes as possible, looping in a bunch of like white voters to have those districts represent just a whole bunch of representatives for white people. There are states with smaller populations than Puerto Rico. I mean, just the point was how big this single district was. Just a massive voting district. Yeah. Traditional cracking and packing. Thanks, Dad. I've inherited a great legacy. Where are we? The court observed that the use of multi-member districts is not necessarily or per se unconstitutional, but it recognized that such districts can be employed to achieve discriminatory ends. The court also cited strong evidence that the legislature had done so in the case at hand, writing at a time when the Democratic Party was dominant in much of Texas. The court noted that a white-dominated organization, which had effective control over candidate slating within that party, had engaged in racial campaign tactics in white precincts to defeat candidates who had the overwhelming support of the Black community, thereby effectively excluding the Black community from participation in the Democratic primary selection process. The court likewise cited evidence that the legislature had invidiously excluded Mexican Americans from effective participation in political life, specifically in the election of representatives to the Texas House of Representatives. Thus, White presented a situation in which circumstantial evidence suggested very strongly that the state had created multi-member districts for the purpose of diluting minority votes. A few years later, when Congress looked for a language that would abrogate Mobile v. Bolden's interpretation of Section 2, it selected terms that were nearly identical to language used in White. The accompanying report of the Senate Judiciary Committee explained that the amendment's purpose was to repudiate Bolden and establish a new vote dilution test based on White. Name the organization, right? Why are we being coy? Okay, we're gonna have to start being more selective here. The court first construed the amended version of Section 2 in Thornburg v. Gingles. Gingles concerned a challenge to North Carolina's multi-member districting scheme on the ground that it diluted the vote of Black citizens. Gingles was decided at a time when this court often paid insufficient attention to the language of statutory provisions. What? I'm sorry. Are we throwing shade at previous courts here? What the fuck? Gingles was decided at a time when this court often paid insufficient attention to the language of statutory provisions, and Justice Brennan's opinion for the court followed this pattern. Instead of analyzing what the statute said, the opinion simply quoted the text of Section 2, of amended Section 2, and then jumped right to the Senate Judiciary Committee report. Relying heavily on that report, the opinion set out 3 threshold requirements for proving a Section 2 vote dilution claim, plus a non-exhaustive list of factors to be considered in making a final decision as to whether the state had violated Section 2. I don't need to look at this old test. In later cases, redistricting plans that states created to comply with the Voting Rights Act were themselves challenged as racial gerrymanders. This court approached such cases by building on the framework from the other racial discrimination cases under the Equal Protection Clause. In those cases, if race played a role in a decision made by a government actor, strict scrutiny applied. Under this standard, the government needed to assert a compelling interest that justified its use of race, and if the analysis progressed beyond this point, the government had to show that its use of race was narrowly tailored to vindicate that interest. So where does this fail, Alito? These people fucking hate the Warren Court. They've been trying to dismantle Warren for decades. Hi. Court modified this framework for racial gerrymandering cases. Although any use of race in government decision-making generally triggers strict scrutiny, in gerrymandering cases, a challenger must show that race was the government's predominant consideration. And in cases where race predominated, states would sometimes assert that compliance with the Voting Rights Act provided a compelling interest justifying the use of race. Yet we never decided whether compliance with the Act could constitute a compelling interest. Instead, we repeatedly assumed without deciding that the Voting Rights Act could constitute a compelling interest because in all those cases the Act actually did not demand the state's race-predominant districting. Thus, the states in those cases could not satisfy strict scrutiny regardless of whether compliance with the Voting Rights Act could provide a compelling interest. Wow, I can't wait to hear him say why this is not a compelling interest. As noted earlier, the underlying litigation in this suit resulted from Louisiana's response to the population changes disclosed by the 2020 census. The subsequent reapportionment of House seats among the states left Louisiana with the same number of seats, 6, that had previously been allocated, but due to shifts in population, the state needed to recalibrate its districts. In 2022, Louisiana enacted a new map, HB 1, that closely resembled its immediate predecessor. HB 1, like its predecessor, included only one district in which black voters were a majority of the voting age population. As soon as HB 1 was enacted, lawsuits were filed in the Middle District of Louisiana asserting that the map violated the Voting Rights Act by packing large numbers of black voters into a single majority black congressional district and cracking the remaining black voters among the other 5 districts. After the suit was filed, the Robinson Court issued a lengthy opinion concluding that HB 1 likely violated the Voting Rights Act by failing to include a second majority black district. What's the problem? The court thus entered a preliminary injunction requiring Louisiana to implement a new map before the 2022 election, which was less than 6 months away. Louisiana objected to the decision and promptly appealed, but because of circumstances outside the state's control, its appeal ended up in limbo. This court granted certiorari before judgment and held the case pending a decision in Allen. Nearly a year later, after deciding Allen, the court dismissed the petition as improvidently granted and remanded the case to the Fifth Circuit to consider Louisiana's appeal in the ordinary course. By that time, the 22 election had passed, and the urgency that had justified the preliminary injunction was no longer present. In a tentatively worded opinion, the Fifth Circuit held that the Robinson District Court's decision was valid when it was issued, but that the preliminary injunction was no longer needed. SB 8 retains the original majority-minority district from HB 1. It then adds an additional majority-minority district, District 6, above in green, to attain a majority black voting age population. I mean, that's a fucked up district. I mean, I won't lie, that's a fucked up district. But all of these fucking district maps are fucked up. To attain a majority black voting age population, District 6 connects black populations from Baton Rouge and Lafayette with the black population in Shreveport. SB 8 differed from the illustrative maps shown below on which the district court relied in Robinson. Why do we gotta be like this? It's honestly embarrassing. It's like, this is human American embarrassment. Not long after SB 8 was enacted, another, like, you just have to hate democracy to do this. You have to hate pluralism. You have to hate egalitarianism. You have to hate other races to do this shit. It's fucking wild. Not long after SB 8 was enacted, another lawsuit was filed, this time in the Western District of Louisiana. The Callais plaintiffs. In considering whether the Constitution permits the intentional use of race to comply with the Voting Rights Act, we start with the general rule that the Constitution almost never permits the federal government or a state to discriminate on the basis of race. Such discrimination triggers strict scrutiny, and our precedents have identified only 2 compelling interests that can satisfy that standard. One compelling interest, not relevant here, is avoiding imminent and serious risks to human safety in prisons, such as a race riot. The only other compelling interest we have found is remediating specific, identified instances of past discrimination that violated the Constitution or a statute. So, is the loophole that it is current discrimination? To rise to the level of a compelling state interest, an effort to remediate past discrimination must satisfy 2 conditions. First, the discrimination must be identified discrimination. In other words, the state or federal government must identify the specific instances of past discrimination that it aims to remediate, and in light of that specification, must determine the precise scope of the injury it seeks to remedy. The states and federal government have no compelling interest in generally remediating past discrimination in a particular industry or region, or the effects of societal discrimination. Second, after identifying the specific instance of discrimination, the institution that makes the racial distinction must have a strong basis in evidence to conclude that its remedial action is necessary. Our acceptance of race-based state action has been rare for a reason. Distinctions between citizens solely because of their ancestry are by their very nature odious to a free people whose institutions are founded upon the doctrine of equality. But what if it's correcting distinctions based on their ancestry? What the fuck? And in redistricting, where the state assumes from a group of voters' race that they think alike, share the same political interests, and will prefer the same candidates at the polls, it engages in racial stereotyping at odds with equal protection mandates. Or undoes that. The initial one did that. The question before us now is whether compliance with the Voting Rights Act should be added to our very short list of compelling interests that can justify racial discrimination. To answer this question, we must understand exactly what Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act demands with respect to drawing of legislative districts. Thanks for being here to keep me company, Maddie. In isolation, opportunity... gotta back it up a little bit. In this complicated verbal formulation, the key concept for present purposes is less opportunity than other members of the electorate to elect representatives of their choice. This language sets a baseline against which to assess the opportunity of minority voters, the opportunity that other members of the electorate have to elect their preferred candidates. To understand this baseline, we must nail down the meaning of 3 terms: less opportunity, other members of the electorate, and elect. There's only like 55 viewers in politics right now. I can't do that myself, I checked. Oh, hey, change to either just chatting or co-working and studying. Okay. One downside to having another person in your house all the time is they have different ideas of how the thermostat should be set. Now I definitely sound like an old white dad. In isolation, opportunity could refer to either a desired outcome or a chance to achieve that outcome. As used in 2B, however, opportunity must mean a chance to achieve a desired result, because the Voting Rights Act does not guarantee equal outcomes. Ew, that phrasing. Don't touch the thermostat! I've never been one to enjoy Family Guy, but I did always appreciate that joke. Or like... Where like suddenly all the dads in like a certain like radius could tell that someone had touched the thermostat, and one dad leans in and goes, "Is my kid here?" Sigh. I hate to hear the justice say does not guarantee equal outcomes. That's just like fucking conservative talking points from my whole childhood. Accordingly, less opportunity must mean a lesser chance. In ordinary usage, less opportunity often takes on such meaning. One might say, for example, that men under 6 feet tall have less opportunity to play in the NBA than those who stand at least 6 feet 7 inches. Oh, that's clever, Alito. Very clever. Gross, he's doing the racism. Look, white people don't get to play basketball as much. So this is a fair shake. The next term, other members of the electorate, specifies the comparator to be used in determining whether the group protected by subsection A has suffered or is threatened with suffering less opportunity to elect representatives of their choice. In conceptualizing the members of this comparator group, we may think of a randomly selected member of the electorate who has particular voting preferences, or we may think of a randomly selected group of voters who share certain voting preferences. These voting preferences may be based on the candidate's party affiliation, ideology, stance on a particular policy issue, personal charisma, or some other characteristic or set of characteristics. But whatever they are, the situation of these randomly selected voters must be compared with that of minority voters alleged to have suffered vote dilution. Or what about some other subcategory based on the subcategory that is being discriminated against? Why do they have to be random? Why do they have to be random? That doesn't make any sense. You can ask me something, Silver Tant. Also, welcome in. So I'd like to say this. I want you to lick so much peanut butter. Oh, that's nice. Yuck. Well, you said something. I don't think that was a question, though. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Is this just like a race to see how fast you can get banned? Just curious. Hi, Frank Big Time. Welcome in. Aloha to you. Men getting breast implants. Is that a problem? You got hang-ups on what other people do? Maybe leave other people alone. Do I have it? Do you mean them? You used a plural noun. I don't have breast implants. Did you get bored pasting the same message? Who was defensive? Just use English right. True, Frank Big Time. I mean, I think they're the only one talking about it. Where did Alito pull all this bullshit about like a randomly selected populace to compare the electors against? Where did that come from? Oh, dang it. Oh, man. This brings us to the final term, to elect. As used in Section 2B, this term must refer to the achievement of electoral victory by casting a ballot. Wow. Putting all these terms together, the baseline is the chance enjoyed by non-minority voters to secure the election of their preferred candidates. What then is the chance that any given non-minority voter or group of non-minority voters has to secure the election of a preferred candidate? The answer to this question depends on the voting preferences of other voters in the district. For example, in a district where most voters prefer Democratic candidates, a Republican voter in that district will have a low chance of securing the election of his or her preferred candidate. Are you fucking serious? I refuse to believe that a Supreme Court justice doesn't know the difference between mutable characteristics and immutable characteristics. What in God's name? What the fuck? But that chance would be substantially higher if the district were instead filled with voters who prefer Republican candidates. The roster of voters who end up in a given district depends, in turn, on the districting criteria used by the state in drawing a legislative map. If a districting map is produced by computer, as is generally the case today, we may think of all the parameters in the algorithm that the mapmaker uses. One necessary parameter would be the number of districts required by law. And another would have to be a range of inter-district population variations that is small enough to comply with the one-person, one-vote requirement. The algorithm might then go on to lay out and assign priorities to whatever additional permissible criteria the legislature chooses to use. That is what a randomly selected individual voter and group of voters can expect regarding their opportunity to elect a preferred candidate. This is just so blatantly, intentionally misunderstanding things. Not only is this the best reading of the statutory text, what? You gotta be shitting me, Alito. Read the dissent on the next stream? That sounds good. Yeah. No, I'm down for that. Not only is the best reading the statutory... but it also ensures that Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act does not exceed Congress's authority under Section 2 of the 15th Amendment. That provision confers the power to enforce the amendment by appropriate legislation. Thus, to lie within Congress's authority, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act must effectuate by appropriate measures the constitutional prohibition in Section 1 of the 15th Amendment. Right? That's what they did! But I disagree on what's appropriate, Maddie. Our 14th and 15th Amendment jurisprudence delineates what constitutes appropriate legislation in the sense relevant here. In legislation enforcing these amendments, there must be a congruence and proportionality between the injury to be prevented or remedied and the means adopted to that end. Congruence of proportionality. So you mean they drew a racist district, so they drew a non-racist district? Huh? As the court has long held, the 15th Amendment bars only state action motivated by a discriminatory purpose. So a law that seeks to enforce the 15th Amendment by prohibiting mere disparate impact would fail to enforce a right that the amendment secures. That is never appropriate, because Congress cannot enforce a constitutional right by changing what the right is. The district isn't racist because they could draw it as racist? Huh? I don't follow. But he just went through like a whole thing about how the jurisprudence goes into like White v. Register set a standard that didn't require proving intent. You can prove a discriminatory purpose through other means. It seems like he is saying it is legal to draw districts that favor Republican elections even if it has racist effects because that wasn't the direct intent of the parameter used. I mean, yeah, he's saying, right now he's saying that, like, there isn't intent. You can't prove purpose, discriminatory purpose. But drawing Republican-centered districting maps is fine. Which shouldn't be fine in the first place. That shouldn't be how people's votes are determined. For this reason, the focus of Section 2 must be enforcement of the 15th Amendment's prohibition on intentional racial discrimination. No. Well, I mean, sure, but you don't have to prove intent. When Section 2 is properly interpreted in the way we have outlined, it is sufficiently congruent with and proportional to the amendment's prohibition. While that interpretation does not demand a finding of intentional discrimination, thank you, it imposes liability only when the circumstances give rise to a strong inference that intentional discrimination occurred. Suppose, for example, that the application of a state's districting algorithm yields numerous maps with districts in which the members of a minority group constitute a majority, and suppose that the state cannot provide a legitimate reason for rejecting all those maps and eliminating all majority-minority districts. In such a situation, the inference of racial motivation is strong, and Section 2 of the 15th Amendment permits the imposition of liability without demanding that the courts engage in the fraught enterprise of attempting to determine whether the state legislature as an institution, as opposed to certain individual members of the state's hired mapmaker, was motivated by race. Only when understood this way does Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act properly fit within Congress's 15th Amendment's enforcement power. Basically, he's just like, yeah, I mean, you can do a strong inference of racial discriminatory purpose, but in like a case that's like not like this one, just is some other one that you could do it with. He even allows the person who draws up the parameters to have racist intent so long as the legislature as a whole isn't provably intentionally racist. Let me reread that. In such a situation, the inference of racial motivation is strong, and Section 2 of the 15th Amendment permits the imposition of liability without demanding that the courts engage in the fraught enterprise of attempting to determine whether the state legislature as an institution, as opposed to certain individual... Yeah, so here he's saying you don't have to find intent. So the circumstances could prove that the map maker is racist. You don't have to prove whether the legislature or the map maker was racist. Alito speed running this. He doesn't care. No, of course he doesn't care if the map maker's racist. What are we looking at?
Nice argument, Senator. Why don't you back it up with a source?
My source is that I made it the fuck up.
Maddie, how dare you? How dare you post references to my favorite franchise? He says even if that is provable, it's not enough. I made it the fuck up. He demands that you prove the institution is racist, which is... No, you don't have to prove it. He's saying you don't have to prove it's racist. You can just, like, get an inference. In other cases, not this one. What circumstance did he say that, like, you could do the inference? Suppose, for example, that the application of a state's districting algorithm yields numerous maps with districts in which the members of a minority group constitute a majority, and suppose that the state cannot provide a legitimate reason for rejecting all those maps and eliminating all minority districts. So in a situation with a bunch of maps, with a bunch of districts that are majority-minority, and then the legislature can't provide a good reason why it didn't accept any of them, that's a situation that has a strong enough inference. Not this one. By contrast, interpreting Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act to outlaw a map solely because it fails to provide a sufficient number of majority-minority districts would create a right that the amendment does not protect. Because... And such an interpretation would run headlong into the Act's express disclaimer against racial proportionality. They weren't guaranteeing racial proportionality. It was just evident that the map was racist. Properly understood, Section 2 thus does not intrude on states' prerogative to draw districts based on non-racial factors. Redistricting constitutes a traditional domain of state legislative authority. But if the evidence shows that it is along racial divides, then yeah. We have held that they may use traditional districting factors such as compactness, contiguity, maintaining the integrity of political subdivisions, preserving the core of existing districts, and protecting incumbents. Nothing in the Constitution requires states to heed these criteria, of course, and the desirability of some of these criteria might be disputed. The same is true with respect to the drawing of districts to achieve partisan advantage. Disapproval of partisan gerrymandering dates back to the founding. But partisan gerrymandering claims are not just justiciable in federal court. How convenient. What's up, Elaney? For this reason, as we have repeatedly made clear, when a state defends a districting scheme on the ground that it was drawn for partisan purposes, plaintiffs have a special burden to overcome. To prevail, the plaintiff must disentangle race from politics by proving that the former drove a district's lines. And that's where we get to the second part of the new, completely unsatisfiable Alito test. Studying economics is beyond me. Here it is. A plaintiff may carry its disentanglement burden by offering an alternative map that achieves all the state's objectives, including partisan advantage and any of the state's other political goals, at least as well as the state's map. If your state wants to create Republican favored gerrymandered maps, you have to prove that your proposed majority-minority district also satisfies their desire to maximize Republican seats. Does the institution coming from, let's say, the Daughters of Confederacy enough to prove it's racist? I got something to debate with you, know-nothing attorney. Shut up, Elaney. I'll fight you. What? What's up? Plaintiff may carry its... Oh, I already read that part. In short, Section 2 imposes liability only when the evidence supports a strong inference that the state intentionally drew its districts to afford minority voters less opportunity because of their race. Not only does this interpretation follow from the... but that's how you started this section. You can't conclude with how you started the section. Metal detectors should be installed in hospitals and schools regardless of whether guns are banned or not. What? No, because cost. Install metal detectors on all of our homes as well. Yeah, what are you, big metal detector? This interpretation of Section 2 does not require abandonment of the Gingell's framework. We need only update the framework so it aligns with the statutory text and reflects important developments. First, vast social change has occurred throughout the country, and particularly in the South. What was the quote, Maddie? Things have changed in the South. Also, guns banned don't make guns disappear. Okay. But it would make them illegal. No expense is too great for our most vulnerable. Okay, then increase taxes on the billionaires. Are we talking public hospitals or private hospitals? We're talking public schools or private schools? Oh, get him a little Donny Fund. First, vast social change has occurred throughout the country, and particularly in the South, where many Section 2 suits arise. As this court has recognized, things have changed dramatically in the decades since the passage of the Voting Rights Act. Then why are all these suits coming out of the South? At the time of the Act's passage, the nation had faced nearly a century of entrenched racial discrimination in voting, an insidious and pervasive evil which had been perpetuated in certain parts of our country through unremitting and ingenious defiance of the Constitution. Let's not call the racist defiance ingenious, please. Okay, so we want not only do we need to fund these public hospitals so that they stop closing, but also need to give them enough money for there to be metal detectors. Like, Eleni, why do you think we don't have metal detectors in every public building? Eleni, you don't need to tell me. I work with hospitals in several states. But the Voting Rights Act led to great strides in the ensuing decades. Voting tests were abolished, disparities in voter registration and turnout due to race were erased, and African Americans attained political office in record numbers. By 2004, the racial gap in voter registration and turnout had largely disappeared, with minorities registering and voting at levels that sometimes surpassed the majority. Black voters now participate in elections at similar rates as the rest of the electorate, even turning out at higher rates than white voters in 2 of the 5 most recent presidential elections nationwide and in Louisiana. Wow, he is failing the LSAT right now. This is some really shit statistics. You got your few elected representatives. Why do you need more? You don't need more. You got some. And more black voter participation doesn't necessarily mean that their votes have done anything. It doesn't mean that their votes have the same power as white voters' votes. It would only cost $15 million to install metal detectors in every public hospital and every public school. Well, if you can allocate $15 million, I'm not necessarily opposed. Well, I am opposed. I think there are probably some better things we could do with that money. Like, don't a lot of hospitals, like, have knives in there? In public spaces that people can eat? Yeah. Right, like, let's yeah, scalpels too, yeah. If you support free healthcare, why are you talking about allocating money to metal detectors instead of healthcare? Second, a full-blown two-party system has emerged in the states where Section 2 suits are most common. What are you talking about? Eagles arose in the context of a one-party system in which black and white voters had starkly different voting patterns despite their affiliation with the same party. In the area involved in Gingles, an overwhelming majority of white voters did not vote for any black candidate in the Democratic Party primary elections, which for all practical purposes selected the candidates who would ultimately obtain office. And in general elections, white voters in heavily Democratic areas often ranked black candidates last among Democrats. Such inter-party disparity showed that black voters had less opportunity to elect their preferred candidate because of their race, not because of their partisan affiliation. Okay. Under the updated Gingell's framework, the facts of this suit easily require affirmance. Louisiana's enactment of SB 8 triggered strict scrutiny because the state's underlying goal was racial. The state never hid the ball. It configured District 6 to achieve a black voting age population over 50% because it knew that if it failed to do so, the Robinson Court would very likely find its map unlawful and order the use of something like the Robinson Plaintiffs' illustrative maps, which would have imperiled one of the influential incumbents the legislature sought to protect. The state's intentional compliance with the court's demands constituted an express acknowledgement that race played a role in the drawing of district lines. Louisiana therefore had to satisfy the extraordinarily onerous standard of proving that its use of race was narrowly tailored to further a compelling governmental interest. No compelling interest justifies SB 8. Section 2 does not provide a compelling interest because the state did not need to create a new majority-minority district to comply with the act. That is because at every step of the Gingell's framework, the Robinson plaintiffs failed to prove their Section 2 case. On the first Gingell's precondition, the Robinson plaintiffs did not meet their burden because they did not provide an illustrative map that met all the state's non-racial goals. The most obvious deficit in the plaintiffs' illustrative maps was the failure to meet the state's political goals, including incumbency protection. And if your political goal is to cut out minorities, sorry. Because it's a false dichotomy. We spend enough on taxes to have many things. Internet should be a human right. No, I refuse to debunk that. Nor did the plaintiffs meet their burden on the second and third Gingell's preconditions. To show racially polarized voting, the Robinson plaintiffs offered evidence that black and white voters consistently supported different candidates, but their analysis did not control for partisan preferences. Oh my god. Oh my god. Sorry, black people cannot have equal voting power if black people all vote Democrat. No. Because that's just giving Democrats more voting power. Well, that's what makes it entirely wrong, Frank Big Time. Because they're not ruling on the constitutionality of gerrymandering. They're finding that it is racist to combat racism with racial solutions. The Robinson Court also relied on the sordid history of intentional discrimination by Louisiana officials, yada yada. I'm telling you, the crazy idea of registering as a Republican en masse might actually work. Should children have government-issued IDs they get at school? The judgment of the district court is affirmed, and these cases are remanded for proceedings consistent with the opinion. Oh. Thank you, Alito, for just being a load of shit. That isn't what they did. The fact that it was 1/6 of the representation with 1/3 of the population was used as evidence of the racial discrimination, not to prove that they should have 1/3 of the representation. Yeah, little Donnie Fun. It's too bad people won't vote for Democrats. How long is the descent? Ooh. Whoa, Maddie. Holy shit. Fucking get him, guys. Fucking rip him a new one. And then I read earlier that Kagan usually writes respectfully, I dissent, and here she just went, I dissent. Oh, well, shucks. And now that they've put so much effort into it, it's time for me to wrap up stream, so I'll go ahead and ban them. Voting for Democrats is pluralism of ignorance? What? Yeah, double banned. The PSYOP is working? Why would I vote for a party that has historically killed social movements and sided with fascists? What? Oh. Because it moves the Overton window to the left. That's an easy answer. You either move the Overton window to the left or to the right. The end. I don't know what else you want me to say. If you would like a progressive candidate, then you better start normalizing more, like, democratic liberal policies. Yeah, good luck with that, Elaine. Enjoy never making a difference. If you want progressive candidates, that's not what you do. A primary? Okay. Okay, local, sure. What I'm saying is that if, like, an entire population joined the Republican Party, it would fuck with their internal structure. Yeah, I know. I get you, Maddie. Sure. I'll do the Constitutional Convention, you do that one, and neither of us will ever get anywhere. Listen here, I want perfection. Every uneducated person ever. Okay. And with that, I guess we will look at the dissent next time. And I haven't gotten word back on the Oh, I have gotten word back on the debate. The US government should eminent domain corporate-owned residential property for a new Fair Housing Act. Me in the affirmative versus one other. With 2 days to prepare, I guess I'm not doing anything tomorrow night, so I can use tomorrow to prepare. What do y'all think of that topic? Taking the affirmative on the U.S. government should eminent domain corporate-owned residential property for a new Fair Housing Act. Huh? The dissent? I'm taking the affirmative. I don't know who Tim is. Yeah, I'm thinking about doing another debate Friday night. Sounds good to me. Sign me up. I'm gonna be back on the horseradish patch. Yeah. And then Alright, y'all take a quick look and see if there's anybody y'all want to raid. While I'm finishing this up. Seven the Reverend? I don't even know how you're supposed to say that. Yell at the chuds. Alright, sure. Why not? Let's do it. Alright. I know nothing attorney. I know nothing, so you can too. Because it's only in embracing that we know nothing that we can actually learn anything. And as always, I'm proud of you. I don't need to know you personally for that to be real. It's true and you deserve to hear it. If only because life is hard, it's always been hard, and it always will be hard. But the way you face each and every single day, the way you do, is remarkable. So stay remarkable, and I'll see you guys Friday night. Good night, y'all. Oh, was unable to raid 7th? Irreverend? 7th Irreverend. Oh, can't raid them. I guess I need to follow them. Try again. Nope, can't raid. Guess so. Anybody else? Politics with Matt. All right. Have a good night. Okay. Well, I'll just call it a night for now. Couldn't find anybody on short notice. All right, good night, everybody.